Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to see everyone this morning. How many of you saw the movie a long time ago, The Field of Dreams? Most everybody's seen that at one time or another. It's a really fabulous movie. And it kind of swept Unity churches, most especially the idea that if you build it, they will come. If you build it, they will come. The only problem is that many people got into building things without building the consciousness for it as well. So we can build a lot of things, but if we don't have the consciousness for it, then we could go out and borrow money and do all these things that some churches did do, and some of them didn't build the rest of it, if you will. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you can say, I want this or I want that, but until you have the consciousness. And this was such a cool movie because it was about the idea of taking a cornfield that had actually run it was really all about second chances is what it was about. But the cornfield had kind of run its glory too. I guess you can only plant corn and cotton and certain things in so long in a field. But this man, Kevin Costner in the show, and actually it was cool because some of the old guys were, I just call them old guys anymore, but James Earl Jones was in it, Burt Lancaster was in it. I don't even know if Burt Lancaster's living anymore. Ray Liotta. Somebody else was in it that was really good as well. But anyway, the whole idea is that this man had this vision of this baseball player coming in and out of this cornfield, and he actually got to play with what would seem nobody else could see it at the time, a ghost of what was his name? Shoeless Joe Jackson. And so the whole idea was that he kept believing and believing and believing even when circumstances were very tough in his life financially, and sure enough, they built that baseball field and people did come, and it really truly made a big difference. But the most important part of the show today, or what I'm talking about, is number one, second chances. Not just only second chances, but third chances, fourth chances, 1,321 chances, because 1,322 might be the time when you do it different. Has anybody ever done it 1,321? Only found 1,322, you shifted and finally made it. So thank God we have a God of many opportunities and circumstances. And our lesson, the series, has been about harvesting our good, if you will. And today's lesson is called Fertile Fields. And that's why this gold mine idea, sitting on a gold mine, is so powerful, because we forget how fertile this field of our mind is and how absolutely powerful it is. And so we're going to continue to play with words, and we're going to use the word field as an acronym, if you will. I played with it this morning and realized I always love an acronym that goes both ways. It starts one way and builds, and then it'll go the other way. So I hope you hear how it goes both ways. So we're going to start with an F, and we started with an F every week almost, because first things first. When I began this lesson or this series, I said that. What? First things first. And what do we always start with is our faith. We have to put our faith in something, in our belief. And so if you don't start with building with your faith, then you can start with something else. But ultimately, faith is an absolute imperative point in starting to build anything. Because very rarely does just something come up. I mean, boom, it just comes up. You got to have faith in it. And so you can imagine what this young man, his name was Johnny, and he was walking across the graduation. It was his senior year, and he was walking across the stage. And the principal decided to make him, ask him. He hadn't asked anybody else, but he stopped Johnny. He said, "What do you want to be, Johnny?" And Johnny said, "What I want to be is the best catcher in baseball that ever was." And everybody in the audience laughed, because the chances of this young man becoming the best catcher that ever was very slim. Like sometimes maybe you think of your dreams are very slim. But Johnny Bench proved that his chances were not slim. Johnny Bench ultimately became a 14. I know nothing about baseball. I like football. I don't know. I know when you score in baseball. I know when you score in basketball. That's as much as I know about it. But anyway, he was a 14 times All-Star, a 2-time National League Most Valuable Player. He played in something called the Big Red Machine. As you can see, I don't know anything about it. In 4 National League pennants. But what was the coolest part about this story to me is ESPN named him the greatest catcher ever. Did I say pitcher or catcher?
Catcher.
Oh, good. Great. So even as he's walking across the stage as his graduation, he calls forth his dream, a dream that would seem impossible, a dream that many of us heard, because we're all old enough now to remember. But a young man at 16 years old said, I'm going to go to the Olympics, and I'm going to come back, and I'm going to have won 7 gold medals. Well, Mark Spitz didn't do that, but in the end, he did win 7 gold medals. And so everybody said, that'll never happen again, right? Well, we won 7 gold medals in swimming. And that was in the 70s. Now, we all know in the Summer Olympics, after Michael Phelps came along, he not only had won, how many ever he had won last time in the Olympics, but he's won a total of 12 gold medals, 22 medals in the Olympics altogether. So somebody's saying, that's the 4-minute mile. That'll never happen again. But if that's happened, we all know what? Somebody else somewhere along the way will come and get more gold medals, right? It just happens. As soon as there's one record hit, it seems like at times something's changed. But the one that I was the most fascinated is we think of this faith. Imagine the amount of faith that Johnny Bench had to have about being a catcher, because I mean, all these young boys, I got 3 of them, well, more than 3 of them, but 3 of them dream of being something great in baseball or in sports. And I mean, they got all these people from all these little towns who dream the same dream. So they had to have this great faith. But I want to tell you the story of Paul Alexander. This is an amazing, amazing story. This man was in 1950, Dallas, that's where I was born and raised, was hit by polio infestation, and he got polio. And so he was literally paralyzed throughout his body. He had to be in what was called an iron lung. We don't even hear about iron lungs anymore, but he had to be in an iron lung. And he made a decision. He made a decision to put his faith in something greater than he was. And so what he started to do is he started to hold his breath and actually try and gulp for breath on his own outside of the iron lung. He would hold his breath for a couple of seconds. And then I don't understand how an iron lung, but I guess he got back in the iron lung some way. He'd hold his breath and get back in the iron lung. Well, since he was paralyzed, he also decided he was going to go to school. And he wrote with a pencil in his mouth. A pencil in his mouth. This man gulped and wrote with a pencil in his mouth and did such a thing for so long that by the time he reached 40 years old, he had gone through high school, college, law school, and at 40 he sat for the bar exam in Texas and passed it. He is now a practicing lawyer in Dallas, and he says when people come in, he still can't move. They see the respirator, and he said, you know, that's the first thing that gets her attention. And he says, I tell you what, you don't need to worry about that. That helps me breathe. Now let's just talk about you. And he says it sets them at ease, and they just go about it. And I was thinking about this. I thought, wow, a person who is that dedicated, not too bad to have as your attorney, right? I mean, that's some kind of faith building on something that they believe could happen. I think people, you know, I love stories like this. I tell stories like this all the time because I just don't know. If that was me, could I have gulped for air? Could I have believed I could be the greatest pitcher? I know I could have never been the greatest swimmer, and catcher, and I don't think one of those balls would have come at me, and that would have been the end of that. But anyway, he is totally paralyzed. But we have to realize our paralysis always begins one place, doesn't it? It begins in our thinking and our belief that we can do things. And so what are we beginning to put with these fertile fields of our minds? We always plant that F seed, the faith seed. And remember, faith first. First things first. Go back to faith again and again. So the I in field is that word I used in prayer today, is that beautiful indwelling intelligence. It's I, but I like to go I, because it's beautiful, indwelling, intimate intelligence. It's not out there, it's indwelling, but it's intimate, as close as your very breath. The intelligence of the universe opens to you as you sit and ideas come to you, and that is how we grow new gardens, through this beautiful God seed, this God self, this indwelling intelligence that works through you and as you, that can grow a cornfield or can grow a baseball field out of a field. I just think that is just so fascinating. Grow cotton. Don't grow anything. Enjoy just looking at an empty field, right? Because life is yours. And there's no right or wrong. When we start thinking of big dreams and big possibilities, everybody always has to think, oh, it's got to be big, and I got to be on YouTube, and it's got to be 1 million hits or something. You know, I figure if 1 or 2 people watch our YouTube services, hallelujah and amen, we're doing great, right? I mean, what is big to you? What does the field of dreams look like to you? Because we know that our field of dreams when we were in our 20s looked one way, when we were in our 30s, etc., etc. I don't want to go any farther than our 30s for anybody, right? But we have this beautiful indwelling, intimate presence within us, this intelligence. But we can also talk ourselves out of it by saying, I failed, I'm not good enough, I don't have what I need within me, and that we can begin to think that for so long that it literally begins to crystallize in ourselves and it becomes us. This is what we're planting in the world. Ben Franklin said this, he said, he that is good at making excuses is good at little else. Because we also can get into a habit of excuses. Has anybody ever gotten into a habit of excusing things only to find out that you finally got up and realized that, oh wow, it's important to keep moving. I was talking to somebody about that this morning. The important to keep moving. So our prayers, they were remembering that we have this beautiful, divine, indwelling, intimate intelligence that is there waiting for us to build our dreams with. But we can sit all day long and think about our faith and think about this, oh, I've got this beautiful intelligence, these beautiful possibilities within me. But until we give it that E, we build on the E, energy. We have to give it some energy. And energy comes in a variety of different ways. It can come just purely through prayer. Energizing your faith again and again is to remember today, I'm stepping out in faith. I'm giving my energy to faith. I'm giving to what I want to bring. I want to believe in my life. And that is what I'm going to energize. I'm sure most of you, if you've come to this church, for sure you know, but through your life, you've probably heard the story of the Israelites and going out of slavery and Moses leading them out of slavery. And many of the people of Israelites in that time, they had been slaves and enslaved by a variety of people. The Jewish people were changed deeply, and actually many people don't even know what the original Jewish traditions, except for the 5 books of Torah, were, because just like the Bible, these people were changed because they were enslaved, sometimes up to a couple of 100 years. So if you were enslaved by a people and around a certain people, you would pick up what they do, right? Mm-hmm. So anyway, the Israelites, we know that Moses led them out of this enslavement, but all through the process, they're griping and moaning, griping and moaning, griping and moaning. I'd just rather go back and be a slave. That's what I know, right? That's what they give. So whatever you give your energy to is what's going to come up in the field of your life. But in Exodus, we know, I just wanted to read 2 parts of Exodus this morning. I think they're both really quite wonderful. Moses said to the people, because they're getting ready to go out. They just know they've heard about this promised land. That's where they want to go. I want to go to the promised land. Anybody want to go to the promised land? Well, the promised land is that fertile field within you. And Moses said to the people, fear not, stand firm, and see the salvation, see the salve of God, this possibility of God that stands before you today, and of the Lord, which will work for you today. For the Egyptians who you see today, you shall never see again, because we are going to get away. And so sure enough, that's exactly what Moses does. He leads them out into the wilderness, and so they get out there, and the next thing you know, they have no food. They've already run out of everything that they brought with them, or if they brought much of anything with them, because we know they brought flat bread. And they're, again, griping and carrying on, griping and carrying on. And so God comes, and all of a sudden something lands on the ground every morning. Every morning they are fed this manna from heaven. And it said it's like a dust or something. Nobody's ever really been able to describe what it is. But the wonderful thing is about it says, and on the 6th day they gathered twice as much of this bread, 2 omers apiece. And when all the leaders came together, they said, this is what the Lord has commanded. Wait a minute, that's not the way I wanted to read it. Lana. Wait a minute, that's not what I wanted to read to you. They said that each person ate their fill of this manna. This was when they still had the bread, I guess, but I'm sorry about that. Wow, it's even marked in my Bible. That's why I'm going to get it messed up. But anyway, it says in the Bible, it says each one was fed according to what they could eat. And so for 6 days, every day this manna would fall, except for the 7th. And I guess it could never be kept over for the night. It would go bad, it would spoil or whatever. So when we begin to think here was God feeding them, and yet they were still giving energy and griping and carrying on about going forward. They wanted to go to this promised land. So first they had to have this faith that there was such a thing as the promised land. They felt in their hearts this indwelling intelligence, this intimate intelligence. I trust Moses. I believe in Moses. I believe that we're going to be able to go to this new place. And so they want to give it energy. They truly do. But so with that, they had to give it some, we can think about something, have faith in it, indwell in it, even give it energy. But until we ourselves give it life, until we start living it, if you will, that whole idea of believe is how you live. I can say all day I believe that I have faith, but until I live a faithful life, until I live trusting that faith is possible, then I am just kidding myself. So I love to play with that word live, as you know. So we have to give a livingness to our dreams, to this field of dreams. And so during this whole process, as I just read, they had a Sabbath time. The Jews were very strong on practicing a Sabbath day. A day of living, but also a day of what? Of resting. Of allowing that energy to work in us. And the resting part to me is always when I take a moment to remember that I can stop, I can pray, I can meditate, and oftentimes that is the thing that gives me the life energy that I need. I get to breathe again, I get to recharge, I remember what I'm about. And that gives me this new life for this field. So for 40 years, they wandered around in this wilderness and then heard about the promised land. But if you know how big that area is, you can say, how in the world could they have wandered so long? Because it's a desert, it's true, but they have suggested that they probably came across the promised land and didn't even recognize it. You think you've ever seen the promised land and didn't recognize it? I have a few times, and I wasn't grateful for it. I didn't really see what was going on. And so this livingness that they were doing, I think some of them still had 1 foot back in Egypt. Have you ever done that too? Had 1 foot back to where you were and 1 foot planted forward. And the other thing that happened is in this process is that they sent scouts out. So we just keep going in a circle here. I'm sure none of you have ever gone in a circle in your field of fertile field. And so we're just going in a circle, so they sent scouts out. Oh, we'll send scouts out to find where this promised land is. And the scouts came back, and boy, they were really excited. Oh my gosh, you won't believe it. It's a place of what? Milk and honey. I have no idea to this day why they still say milk and honey, but they do. Milk and honey. But there's one problem. There's giants in the land. Did you know the Old Testament is filled with stories of giants? I mean, giants. And so where'd all those giants go? Did they go by the way of the dinosaur? Was there a whole other race of people? It's a very, I don't care, but I just thought maybe I'd bring that up this morning. So this idea of these giants is where we've been living our life, and we've started with the faith, right? We've moved into this knowing that we have this intimate intelligence within us, that we have, okay, I'm going to energize myself, I'm going to give life to it, but sometimes we have to go back and say, what is my desire? Desire is passion, desire is energy.